apologising to all those who weren't able to attend or view our last cabinet meeting. We're still obviously having to put restrictions in the Guildhall. Last time we weren't able to have visitors or stream, but delighted to welcome both public and councillors as speakers, and also to confirm meeting is streamed. The camera is over there in Hall, and as a consequence, we ask all speakers please use the microphone so that the sound can be picked up, and for guest speakers to come to the table in the middle there and speak if they would. That way, your comments will be appreciated by our viewers as well as those who are present here this evening. Apologies for absence. I have apologies, I think, just from Councillor Fiona Baker. Any other apologies at all? In which case, I'll ask if any member or any officer present wishes to declare an interest in any item on the agenda. Thank you very much. In terms of announcements, not much to say. We do have a private session a little later on in items like highways, and then there is appendix for some confidential information on cross-sleeping. As always, we will explain full details of that, but broadly, because to make these things public would be detrimental to the best value for the public purse, so we'll be taking those items or reviewing them in private. We also have one public speaker and two councillors to speak. That's Councillor Reddy Radley, Councillor Roberts on a number of items on the agenda. Let's move to the minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask if anybody has any suggested amendments or anything they're not happy with on the minutes of the last meeting, please? Okay, in which case, can I ask you to confirm those minutes are agreed? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. That takes us on to our first main item of business, which is to report environmental principles and framework. In a moment, I'm going to ask Phil Larratt to introduce the report and highlight it. We then have a couple of speakers. We'll first of all be asking Mr. Harry Bennett to come forward and make some comments once the report's been introduced. And also Councillor Roberts will be speaking on this one. So we'll hand over to Councillor Larratt. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. The report is in front of you. It's a comprehensive report. I think it's fair to say, Chairman, that we recently agreed our corporate plan, which green and clean is the first priority, identifying our desire to become carbon positive by 2035. In order for us to make progress on this theme, it's important that we develop strong partnerships and ensure that we demonstrate that we are proactively delivering on our objectives. This paper sets out our clear intent, but also reflects the fact that we are starting a journey. The Oxford Cambridge ARC Leadership Group has adopted a set of environmental principles and proposed the development of an ARC environment strategy. It is seeking endorsement for these approaches from the ARC partners, including this council. That's what we're to endorse those principles. Whilst high level, which is part of the report, is an appendix to the report. Whilst it's high level, it does show collaboration at regional level and the starting point for our future consultation and summit, which will clarify our more detailed strategy moving forward. At the Shadow Executive on the 23rd of June last year, an Environment Task and Finish group was established. The overall purpose of the group was to develop and recommend a policy framework to ensure the new authority leads the way in environmental protection through its decision making and service delivery. Appendix 2 identifies the recommendations of the Task and Finish group, which are again a starting point which should be monitored and added to as we progress. I think it's so it should be a living document. As you will see, the recommendations are broken down and generally cost neutral apart from a recommendation which identifies changing our energy to renewable, which has an increase of 5% increase in cost of £50,000 per annum. It is likely that revenue costs So recommendations are in the report at section 3, Mr. Chair, and I recommend that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. Let's now take our speakers. We call first of all, perhaps Mr. Harry Mellor. Welcome. Please take a seat there. And it's the bottom in the centre of all. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Harry Mellor. Half my life I lived in East Western in another world. Was hostess piecemeal development as well, and of course from silence. Today, silence is not an option. I want to make just 2 points. But first, paraphrase a lead character in the recent television series about police corruption. I want to say that effects on incompetence in public office, if ignored or excused for long enough, becomes morally and practically indistinguishable from corruption. Incompetent local council, if not corrupt in any lawful sense, might be held as such in the court of public opinion. Now, 2 points. One, the Cabinet needs to wake up to the fact that climate tax will change. Whilst we may wish to exempt ourselves from North American style life extinguishing extreme heat, we should ask, what if it happens here? What if we have temperatures above 100 degrees and 40? What if there was no respite and cooler? Let me ask, what plans are in place right now that will safeguard our residents from such circumstances? Point 2, there can be no doubt that political climates can change. Last May, fewer than a quarter of the electorate supported you, yet all of us are being taken for granted. Take section 741 in this evening's report that acknowledges zero attempt at public consultation and relies upon a history of presumed successful consultation. In truth, the public have no idea what the future is being planned for. Consider what will happen when residents really do learn about the Oxford Cambridge Arc. And I don't mean the environmental window twist that you are being invited to endorse tonight. I mean the out-of-date groupthink that sincerely believes in a strategy to replace perfectly serviceable and productive farmland with over 1 million homes in a region that in the coming decades of climate stress will lack the water resources for even its current population. As a keystone region in the Oxford Cambridge Arc development strategy, I urge you to take time out to reconsider all that the Arc implies, the logical consequences, if I might borrow from Holocaust, of the unexpected consequences of development. Think instead of doing a different kind of farm, a metaphorical Noah's Ark, because in our highly uncertain future, there is a desperate need for well-developed civil protection plans. I am convinced that everyone will support this 21st vision for a prosperous and survivable future. Why not agree to stop building this new ark tonight? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me just give everybody an opportunity if you want to clarify with you any members of the cabinet. I think that Mr. Mellor has spoken very articulately. Bill, did you have anything you wanted to clarify, or anybody else might be words that are on clients that you wanted to mention? No. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mellor. Thank you. Our second speaker is Councillor Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Overall, the concept of the climate references within the report are hugely important. My concern is over what is the pan-arc level and how that pan-arc level is going to be defined as we move forward. And within the report, there are a number of different dates for achieving some sort of net zero carbon output at 2020, 2030, 2040 and 2050. And I'm not really clear on what we attempt to achieve with adopting these principles, and I worry that it weakens down the commitment that the councils have already established, which is a 2030 goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to clarify anything at all? Or stewards? Mr. Stewart, perhaps you can. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you for the comments. I think as a council just starting, and I take the points of the first speaker, it's important that we set a direction of travel and that we take time to ensure that we've got the strategy and the action plan and the monitoring that we require to make sure that we're in control of our own destiny when it comes to climate change and how, as a council, we want to respond to that locally. That takes time to develop that strategy. I take the point in terms of consultation and again, working with certainly Councillor Larratt and Councillor Hallam and Councillor Hodgson, who's the climate chair, climate lead in support of Councillor Larratt. We are looking at that strategy development at this moment. That will bring in businesses, stakeholders and residents into the development of the strategy. It certainly will be one that meets the objectives as set out in the corporate plan. So therefore, the dates that we talk about within the corporate plan will be the dates that are adopted as part of that strategy as it develops, as it takes forward. So we're in the planning stages of ensuring we've got the right people around the table, that we understand the context of West Northants, the art of the possible in terms of that strategy, and indeed the resources that are required to take that forward. So this is, as Councillor Larratt said, the starting point. It is something that is a foundation rather than the end product in regards to the direction of travel. So, and it should be seen just as that, as a collaborative approach to working with regional partners in ensuring our intent as we go forward in that forum. So, if that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you, thank you. So you going to
Sorry, I didn't realise you got on response to the comments. I thought you were asking if you had any clarification. Sorry, my apologies. Otherwise, I would have said something. But it's fair to say that Stuart has said it all. Really, we're a new council embarking on a new journey, and that's something that is one of our top priorities is to address climate change issues. And I don't think any of us underestimate the huge task that lies before us. I think what we've got to do as well is we've got to engage, and we're not going to do that everything on our own, and we're going to have to work with partners in order to deliver our objective. And this is the start of the journey. We're looking to engage with business, with residents, all sorts of different aspects of the community and the business work in order to take this forward. Consultation was mentioned. We're at the start of the journey. We're not going to got anything to consult on at the moment. There will be extensive consultation as we move forward. So I think, please rest assured that this is not something we're going to go off and blindly do to people. We want to take people with us, and we want to work with people from all different aspects of the community, and that's what we will do going forward.
Thank you. My apologies. I should give you the opportunity to clarify anything with them, but the comments there. We obviously have a forthcoming council meeting in 2 days' time. We will be declaring West Northants the climate emergency. Now, that's not one for people who need to know the answer before they set out the problem, because we don't know the answer. And that's a very scary thing to do. But for me, it's not acceptable for a council these days not to make that declaration and then follow it up with the actions that will move in the right direction towards being carbon neutral by 2030. But there are many things that scare me because I don't know if we know the answers. The only way we will find the answers is by what we call climate study, involving people, action groups, whatever they are, and finding those solutions and actually influencing behaviour, because very little of the carbon that's created is created by the council. Please, Mr. Allen, make sure you're on that list. Email me, and if you copy it, that's just Colin Morgan, the SCP, who's our councillor. We'd be pleased to make sure you're involved in that process. 2 people waiting to speak. Councillor Norton, Matt, you will coming.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. All I was going to say is I'm very happy to support the report and the principles outlined in there. And the challenge for me with the Oxford Cambridge Arc, in the clues in the title, it's Oxford Cambridge, and is how we become relevant in that to make ourselves relevant. And it's good to hear about the development of that strategy that Stuart's talking about. But we've got to make sure we've got our ducks in a row to make sure we're not a part of the periphery or a part of the edge or any of that. We're very clear on what we want and how we're going to do it and how we're going to enact it. But I have support.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Roberts, you mentioned specifically that the year or the goal around that year, and I think that's why it's really important that we declare that as a first kind of business meeting of the full council. We set that objective out from the top. So the first thing we're doing, motion one, our first item of business as the council is addressing that and setting that goal that you mentioned that can be really clear. This is the West Northamptonshire goal, and there's lots of other target years and government dates and various things that are mentioned, but hopefully we'll put our line in the sand on Thursday as to what that goal looks like.
Thanks, Mike. Emma, you can make a comment back. Thank you.
Please, if I can, and appreciate it. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Hallam and Councillor Bull's comments on welcoming the process, and I accept that there are different dates across very different government departments, etc. But we can't have 2 dates. We can't say that we're going to become carbon neutral by 2030 and then have this report go through that says 2040 and actually mentions 2050 later in it. So that's my concern. If we're cloudy and we're not sure, then how can our residents be sure that we're going to do that, we're going to achieve that for them? So whatever you do with this report, that is obviously not, I don't get a vote on that, but whatever you do with this report, that's got to be cleaned up quickly.
Yeah, I think to some extent we're agreeing to a set of principles across a wide range of councils. That's what this says. There may be some confusion in that. And we are clear, and we will be clear with the whole council cross party having the opportunity to vote on Thursday on 2030. I think that's the date to hang on to locally if you live in West Northants. Thanks so much. We come to the vote of the second. I saw Jonathan Harris, Councillor Harris. Now, normally we don't actually register right up to the last minute of the meeting. Have you got a very quick comment you'd like to share with us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have appreciated the need to re-register. I just wanted to support the comments made by Mr. Mellor. I think he makes some very helpful points about, the reality is emergency definition is emergency requiring immediate action. And I think we should remember that councils across West Northants have declared kind of emergency going back as far as 2019. And we're 2 years on from now. So I appreciate the sentiment to be declared that kind of emergency, but it feels like we're still 2 years on, and some actions have taken place. I'm not saying nothing has happened. It doesn't feel like it's under the definition of emergency would be my comment to that. I want to refer to a couple of things. Sustainable development under the NPPF suggests meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I think that's a fairly fundamental definition. My big concern is that we are approving planning. We now have a strategic planning committee also. We will be approving planning, and our policies are still aligned. We're working to existing plans, of course, and they've carried over. But again, we've got a huge gap potentially where we're working to policies in the current plan. And I would argue that we have the opportunity to do things more quickly. For instance, arguing that we should have net zero developments. Now, I understand that we have the opportunity to do that under the Planning and Energy Act 2008. We can overlay and add additional requirements to planning, but I don't believe that they're in our current plan, and I think they should be. So I would urge the Cabinet to consider swiftly how it formulates the planning policy group, and also importantly how it involves and engages others in that process, because I think we can do more quickly. Very briefly, also, councillors might be aware that I have suggested an amendment to your motion on Thursday, which I hope your group will give due consideration to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just if you want to quickly clarify, Rebecca, I think you might want to say something about planning, which I think you'll find is good news, Jonathan. Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you. I completely agree with Councillor Harris' points, and would actually ensure that we have all taken these on board. And I'm looking forward to on HPG, so very much action document that will look across the community and what we can do in terms to resolve the issues that we're talking about. So until we have policies that can be successful, at that point we will be convening the group, as it is in.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's been an excellent discussion on that item. If I may, then if you go to draw your attention back to the recommendation of section 3 of this report, can I ask you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations? Is that agreed? Okay, thank you very much. That takes us on to item 6, which is integrated care across Northamptonshire. Which Councillor Gold has introduced the report. We then have 2 speakers, that will be Councillor Randall and Councillor Roberts. So, Ray, Matt, over to you. Take us through the highlights of this report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take a bit of time going through it, if that's okay, because it's a huge thing to talk about here. So the purpose of the report is to provide Cabot with an update on the Northamptonshire Integration System, or ICS. Integrate. Let me start. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabot an update on the Northamptonshire ICS, which is the Integrated Care System, as it's referred to, and I'll refer to it a few times. And we're asking for support for its implementation. It also gives an update on the ICAN programme, which is a pillar of the ICS that stands for Integrated Care across Northamptonshire. It also seeks support for the aims and outcomes for residents. It seeks approval from Cabinet to complete procurement and award a contract of the ICAN programme on behalf of Northamptonshire Health and Care Partnership. And the report requests delegated authorities given to determine the need for one-off revenue contribution from the council of up to £1 million towards ICAN, with a caveat, of course, Malcolm, there is a clear and evident return on investment when it comes to any future finance. So the Integrated Care System. On the 11th of February 2021, the Department for Health and Social Care published a white paper, Integration and Innovation, which basically talks about working together to improve health and social care for all, which sets out legislative proposals for the health and care field. The white paper groups of proposals under the following themes: working together and supporting integration, stripping out needless bureaucracy, enhancing public confidence and accountability, and additional proposals to support public health, social care, equality and safety. At heart of the changes set out in the paper is a proposal to establish integrated care systems, or ICSs, as statutory bodies in all parts of England. Over the past 3 months, the Northamptonshire Health and Care Partnership have been working to define and establish potential local arrangements for Northamptonshire ICS in readiness for the 1st of April 2022, which is the national legal deadline. This report sets out the work to date in establishing the ICS, which will operate at a county-wide level from an overall Northamptonshire system perspective, but with local strategy and service delivery built around the West Northamptonshire Health and Wellbeing Board. It also sets out how services will come together at a West Northampton Unitary Council and neighbourhood level, which will be the focus of further work over the next 6 months. So ICAN, Integrated Care across Northamptonshire, as I mentioned. We know that our population is growing older and people are living longer with complex conditions. The number of people living in Northamptonshire is expected to grow from 741,000 in 2018 to 803,000 by 2028. That's an increase of more than 8% in 10 years. For our elderly population, there has been a steady increase in the over 65s of around 65% from 122,000 in 2014 to an anticipated 201,000 by 2034. And this is rising faster than most other areas. We're also seeing a rise in mental health demand and the longer term implications of some health inequalities. It is very clear to recognise with these facts we've got a very clear and large challenge in front of us. We know that we cannot continue to work as we are. Working under this pressure and with these demands does not produce the best outcomes for people, and it is inefficient. If we don't make changes, we will need to build more hospitals, spend more on social care. We will need significantly more GPs demand to deal with the demand we expect. What excites me about the ICS ICAN is how the whole operating model links up into a regional and sub-regional level, working down also into a neighbourhood and sub-place level. This basically means our communities. There has been some brilliant work in the Outreach Directorate around the creation of community hubs and the whole notion of supporting people to live longer, more independently by maximising links and assets within our communities through ICAN and the ICS is something we can all, I'm sure, sign up to. These links also provide wide opportunities for other service areas of the council. ICAN is a joint initiative with health partners built on the transformation of adult social care I just mentioned, that was commenced in 2019. The ICAN programme will see the realisation of benefits across health and social care in terms of improved outcomes for residents, reduced operating costs and less reliance on acute hospital care, as the focus shifts to more community-based care, prevention and joint work. Whilst creating significant improvement to the experiences people can have with health and social care locally, successful implementation of ICAM is also designed to deliver between 13.3 and 18 million pounds recurrent savings to the local health and social care system. These savings have been further quantified and validated by the Health Systems Director of Finance since the previous Cabinet report earlier this year. Page 59 of the report onwards sets out very clearly the case for change, including reference to working jointly, early help and prevention, and simplifying things for our residents. Also, keeping people away from the acute and expensive hospital beds that reduces their outcomes the longer people stay in there. ICAM is one of 4 system priorities for the ICS, which have been identified and agreed by partners. For information, the other 3 areas are mental health, elective care, and children and young people, all crucial and critical areas for all of us. Final part of the report sets out the recommended approach to mobilise a system partner to enable the programme to be taken forward. So today we're asking the Cabinet to agree the following recommendations. A, to note progress towards establishing the integrated care system and the further work that was required to describe how the ICS will operate at council and neighbourhood level. B, delegate to the Executive Director of Adults, Communities and Wellbeing in consultation with myself, the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health, the decision whether to modify the Adult Social Care TOM contract with New Europe. C, recommend to Council the approval of one-off revenue funding of up to £1 million to be agreed from general fund balances to contribute to the IPAM programme, subject, of course, to satisfactory evidence of a likelihood of a positive return on the investment. And D, delegate to the Executive Director of Adults, Communities and Wellbeing in consultation with myself again, the Executive Director of Finance and the portfolio holder of finance, the power to determine whether there is satisfactory evidence of a likelihood of return on investment. And E, note that the IPAM funding will be included within Better Care from section 75, and that this will be reported to the government with the West Hampshire Health and Wellbeing. The reason for the recommendations given at section 4. And finally, due to the significance and the complexity of the ICS and I've suggested to the director that we put together some sort of member briefing so everyone can get a bit of a wider understanding of what the effect of this will have in our communities and how crucial and critical it is moving forward. So I'm pleased to present the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really comprehensive summary. What's what we were actually right. This is one of the most incredibly exciting things for years potentially. Opportunity to improve the quality of lives and also great that a member briefing would be a really helpful thing. There are 2 speakers. First, if we will welcome Councillor Wendy Radcliffe. Thank you.
Thank you. I welcome the report. Sorry. I welcome the report. I'm still ploughing my way through it. As you know, that we've heard, it is a huge report. But I've got loads of major concerns actually, and it's how we're going to deliver all the things that are in that report. I'm sure that many times we've sat in council meetings and we've had a report presented to us, and it all looks marvellous and fantastic. But then at the end of it, so much of it fails. I was talking to a lady only this week, and we were talking about bed blocking in hospitals when they're physically fit to return home, but there's no care package in place, and that care package will take up to 12 weeks, which means that person then is laid in that bed for 12 weeks, getting incredibly weak. I had a leg brace on for 6 weeks, and my leg is really, really like a little bit of lettuce now. So, but what she was talking about was, is there a difference if this is self-funded? Because her auntie was self-funding her aftercare, and her care package was put in place within days. But if the local authority are going to be funding it, then it seems to take a lot longer. So, you know, I'd like some reassurance how that's going to work. Mental health in schools especially is absolutely, it's horrendous. If you speak to any head teacher, they will tell you that they've got farming, they've got pupils that come into school, weeks through lack of food. You know, how are you going to improve on that? But there's loads in that report. There's too much you need to go through. But to me, it doesn't tell me how you are going to produce all those outcomes. I hope it works. I would rather, as sat here today, and you tell me that actually that there wasn't going to be all these huge savings. I'd rather you told me that we're not going to save 15 million, that 15 million is going to be used to improve our services and make it something wonderful. So, you know, hopefully it does work. But personally, I don't really see how it's going to make a huge savings. Thank you.
Thank you. Just was anything you want to clarify with what the short might want to respond to? Is there anything to clarify, or do you just want to respond to it?
I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that £50 million, if that is saved, will be put back into, you know, providing better services. That's for the whole system. So we know that the system has been very inefficient. And from my experiences, when there's been pressure in health, when there's been agreements put in place to get people out of hospital, when there's pressure on the system hasn't coped in the past. I think over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been some really, really good work, especially around bed blocking and how the system, we work with hospitals and the work that New Europe have done previously to make sure that people get out much more quicker. So I would argue that 15 million, any savings that we will be making will be put back and used to provide a better level of services. I certainly agree with the point that this is huge and a challenge for the system, and that's the challenge for me as the new chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, Western Hampshire, is that we've got to make this work. It's statutory. It's something that is happening, and you know, I will be doing my best to hold the system to account. You know, there's some great people, and COVID has accelerated an awful lot in this space in terms of how we work together and we get people out of hospital quicker, more efficiently, and how we're working with them when they come out. And so we've got to carry on, pick that up, and help, you know, push that through to make the system better and more efficient. And I think there's a huge amount that we said for working with our partners in communities and as local representatives. That's the bit that I see very clearly that could work and add a massive amount of value to the system to avoid putting people in hospitals. But we all know the longer they stay there, the more sooner they deteriorate, and the bigger burden they are on the system, and also the poorer the outcome they leave hospital with. But I think the bottom line is we need to get something put together for members so we can all ask a lot more questions, get presented with a lot more detailed information, and you know, be better versed to go and I think we can all hopefully go away when we know more about this and champion it in our communities and promote it, because it is, I see it as a ground shift in the way the system works together.
Thank you. Bold ambitions for sure, really bold ambitions, but we stretch the bounds. So, Adam, you're going to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that as the report sets out, hopefully the school will be meeting this time next week to discuss the issues of this paper. We're looking at procurement first, the water program. So I think that's an ideal chance for members to start with some different questions with the and other issues around the school board. So I encourage absolutely all councils to work together with that through the process. Absolutely.
And just one final one, Chair. Mental health is huge, isn't it? And that's a pillar of the whole ICS, and it links into again the Health and Wellbeing Board. There's a mental health board, and we all know, we've all heard and have a lot of sympathy with you know, what we've been hearing from schools, especially kids going through COVID. So that's going to be a key focus for the whole ICS.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your first speech. Robert, so you've got the now.
Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Councillor Golby and Stuart for their level of engagement on this because and sharing information with me is a big subject. It takes a lot of getting used to it. It's something you've never been exposed to before. On the face of things, the concept and the goals absolutely seem to be one to be supported and one which will deliver for our communities better life chances and positive financial outcomes. The efficiencies generated seem significant, 13.3 to 18 million in efficiency savings if materialised. But I understand from the information I've received that we're actually unlikely to see a lot of that, and our health partners are likely to benefit. Now, that's not to diminish that saving, but it's important when we consider how much money or input the council will have to add. It's understood from the report that there's no commitment from the council to the contract, or any financial commitment will happen unless two things occur. One is the confirmation from health that they'll supplement the 8 million, and two, that the efficiencies and savings for the council are seen before any of the requested funds are implemented. The problem I have is that could we have foreseen the need for the modification of the contract that's required? And if health committed an amount at the time that was clearly insufficient for the programme to be delivered, when they confirmed the amount, why was that not challenged then? Or what is the mechanism for such challenge? And I genuinely ask the question because I don't know. I also had some concern when I looked at the cabinet papers for February 21, and they said that there was an investment of 6 million that was needed, which is different to the current papers. And also they suggested that savings were circa 16 to 21 million pounds. And what I'm not clear on from either report is who's determined those changes to those figures, and whether there's the increase in costs and reduction in savings figures have all come from Newton York, who are in fact the beneficiary of the contract modification, or whether there's been some other analysis that generates the figures and verifies them for us to allow this input to be made. The other bits missing for me is where the checks and balances arise, should these recommendations be accepted. Forgive my voice, straightening slightly. Scrutiny is referenced as a partner, and I understand that will be a check and balance, and I'll be specifically requesting that Scrutiny has a group set up to monitor this, and we look for a commitment from officers and cabinet members to support that process over the next 12 months, because it's essential to have regular checks and balances in on this. Also, the Health and Wellbeing Board will be used to monitor progress, and I understand that we are due to receive a place as opposition on that board, but I'm yet to have that confirmed, so I'd really like that clarity. We've all talked about co-production being key to the success of arrangement, and I support wholeheartedly what Councillor says around integrating the community into all of those changes. But how do we process the information for people around? It's one of the biggest work programs, if not the biggest work program. Our health and place systems are going to undergo. And how do we make it accessible? How do we make members and residents alike feel they understand what's being done and what is actually being achieved for them? How do we make that happen? As a driver of this impact is the winter months, and efficiency and safety being paramount over the winter months. Right? Alongside scrutiny reviewing, I would actually suggest a formal update back to the council early 2022 on whether this has had the desired effect, so that we can, if necessary, make quick and fast changes to the direction of the programme. Because if we don't, I worry, as Councillor Randall said, that we just lose this in the ether, and all of the hard work, and you can see all of the hard work that's gone into the process, is also lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not there. Lucy, do you want to clarify Max or these Stuarts?
Well, I'll go first, and perhaps I'll ask Stuart to clarify some of the financial points.
Sounds good.
I totally agree with an update to council. I think it's maybe through cabinet and council, because it is huge and it's critical. So it's something we do need to come back to. Again, that's it. That point you said about how is it going to be achieved and how are we going to make it relevant to our communities, and that's the exact point I've always had at the Health and Wellbeing Board in the past, as we talked about a lot of big strategic grand plans, but what does that mean to people and how do we get them engaged? But that remains, I think, a challenge in the future with this. In terms of the financial element, did you want to ask you that? So I'll just work through the points. So,
Can you speak right into the
Yeah,
mic?
apologies. So I suppose the first thing, around this is around setting out that the work that we as a system are envisioning to do is best practice. There are a number of authorities in the country, like Birmingham and Cornwall, who are further into this kind of process. But it's fair to say that this isn't something common value from a procurement perspective, and actually we define exactly what the costs were. So you're right to identify the first cabinet commission in order to procure a system partner for a value of 6 million, with an expected return on investment of 60 to 21. As the report identifies, that 6 million was sufficient in order to go forward, and it has enabled us to take forward at least 2 of the pillars. We were presented with a dilemma in that we have vastly increasing pressures in the winter. We've identified a system partner with suitable credibility, experience, and skill set to partner a formal procurement process. And that dilemma was really around, is it legally affordable for us to actually take forward a new procurement, or actually in line with the contract procedure do they present the set of services, and on consideration of that care system is all about collaborating around it. We view that we had a narrative which allows us to take forward based on the approaches defined in the document. In relation to scrutiny, the fact that there is a difference in the savings in the first phase to the second phase is all around that scrutiny as to what this will deliver. So directors of finance, not just here within council, but across NGH, KGH, Northampton, NHT, the CCG, have gone to considerable lengths to interrogate the savings profile attached to this, and through that work, that we've made reach the position where the quantified savings attached to this are as good as around 30. There is further work required in order for us to be really, really specific as to where those savings will fall. And that is really clearly in that we need to have that level of assurance and evidence that before the council considers any form of investment in the round, that there is clear information that we can validate through a array of different questions that we take that to scrutiny first, to ensure that as a council we can put our hand and say this is real value. I suppose the kind of final thing that I mentioned is around us needing to do something. So if you think about integration, we've talked about integration for decades, not just here, but in the country. When you look at ICANN as a specific, it's the first thing that the Health and Care Partnership comes together to deliver at scale. It's the first thing that we've actually sat down as a partnership and start to talk about how our system needs to deal with demand and complexity, as opposed to organisations taking unilateral decisions which firstly affect the people and the department. So the notion of moving this forward is the first thing we've ever had that's going to bring about tangibly different for people. And the fact that it demonstrates an ability to save money is an added value.
Thank you. Quite a lot to this. It's very, very busy. Do you have any further comments, Tom? Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, just want to say as well that there is what we call a people's advisory group, which has carers association, public sector, health watch, people like that, and that all of these sort of integrated care groups go through. And we've taken the ICAS, like I said, we've designed the SRO system for ICAS. We've taken this through them, and they've been sort of very keen in their feedback and sharing with people around the coastline elements of it, and they've asked, probably as users pointed out as well, for an easy read version of it, so that they understand what it means to be, what we mean by certain process and all of it is that gets sent through that route to make sure that we're always thinking about people and what they need out of it, and then how we share information with them about what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks, Stuart. And I understand, I'm supportive of the concept. I understand the proposal. My concern is how do we, because the reason for the report is because it's a modification to the contract. That's the reason for the report. How do we make sure that the savings are accurate, the spend is accurate, and another modification, well, you won't be able to do a modification because it's not legal to do another one. But how do we make sure we're not in the same position in however many months' time? How do we stop that?
So I suppose in relation to this as a program, you're right. What we set out is and in relation to demonstrating progress, the delivery of savings, we need to agree really clear mechanisms that allow us to demonstrate how to move forward, good or not so good, so that there's a level of clarity, not just for members, but the local people, because if you look at the benefits that were associated with this will deliver for local people, they need to get the right to understand. Now, if I think about modifications of contracts, then modification of contracts has three set of circumstances around it, which we have to satisfy in order to mitigate potential risk of legal challenge. The council, through its contracting procedure, really clear process to ensure that modification is an absolute last resort. And in the context of in getting a level of assurance that modification contracts are not on the feature what we do in West Northampton, then that could be something that scrutiny wants to look at quarterly basis as per the number of contracts which are taken forward outside the formal contract.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry, you were sick. Same thing again, we normally register, but I know we're mixing all sorts of cultures from different councils. So would you like to make a quick comment? And then remind folks to register. Welcome.
Thank you, and yes, I do apologise. I didn't know that was the system. Obviously, I've come in my capacity of the chair of the People Revenue Scrutiny Committee, but obviously come late to the table on this in terms of reading the report. And I was a bit confused, I have to say, having thought that the integrated care was going to be looking at and integrating the work of the NHS and the council. And by appointing a third party, this Europe, it seems like both parties are keeping the whole thing at arm's length. So I was a bit disappointed about that and just wanted to know what they're expected to be doing for 8 million. Is it just a management consultancy or are they actually producing something? So I'd asked for the presentation to come to the first meeting of the Overview Scrutiny Committee, which Stuart was very kindly agreed to do. And one of the things I would have been asking at that is, obviously, you're too far down the line in terms of procurement, but I'd quite like to actually look in depth at what the contract actually is meant to be producing. And I would have been asking my fellow councillors on that group for some volunteers to form a working group. And I think I've just got my first volunteer, judging by what was said earlier. Obviously, want to know what this success will look like and what are the safeguards for the individuals. Because we're looking at reductions in 5% in people going to hospital, etc., etc. We don't want to find that the vulnerable are left behind. So want to know what safeguards are going to be in place, and we'll have got to keep an eye on all of that, and how is it going to be achieved. So trust me, we will be looking in detail through the Overview Scrutiny Committee on this. One comment that did occur to me when I was reading the paper, when it came to the risk register, it said none. I just wondered whether you might want to think about the production of the government's new Social Care Act, because that may have a very significant influence in how we operate. You know, if they come out with something completely mad and crazy that we're not really expecting. It could definitely have an influence. So I want to put in what to flag that into risk assessment. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much. This was so helpful. I see that Stuart noted something down. Do you want to mention anything? Stuart, does that just accept?
To thank Councillor Henry for her comments and make sure that we include the opportunity to go through those issues.
Thank you very much. Rosie, in case you haven't, because your mask on for, I think, just so you're aware. So I want to have some discussion. What an important thing this is that we're embarking on. But I should confirm agreements and recommendations, which of course are at section 3. Can I just ask Cabinet to confirm if they're agreed? Thank you very much.
Chair, whether we have some sort of update, whether quarterly or, you know, at a relevant point, and add that on to the recommendation as well.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, and certainly we talked about member briefing and all sorts of things. It's important that everybody knows exactly what's going on. Support this, isn't it? So I think that's applied. So you're just suggesting that as part of what we're going to do, we are asking for quarterly updates to come back to Cabinet. Is that
Or at a relevant point.
yeah, well, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Okay. So I think what we just agreed includes that. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 7. This is with Mike. There are no speakers, Richard. This is appointments to act on projects. Mike, go to you.
Thank you very much. A really quite a simple one. This comes around every kind of post-election this report. We will keep this under review because I know sometimes some of the bodies don't often convene, and we have done a review ahead of doing this report. So really straightforward. I'm happy to propose it tonight.
It's fairly straightforward. I think. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Just ask you to confirm you agree with the recommendations, please. Agree. Agree. Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 8, DLG's work sleeper accommodation program. I think this one was we had. There is some private information in a separate member of the appendix. And we also one speaker, which is Councillor Roberts. So start by going if you want to highlight the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the next in a series of government initiatives to assist with the prevention of sleeping across the country. So we've had sleeper accommodation programs to provide move-on homes those long-term access to this council, as well as the more important support services provided to achieve sustainable reduction in sleep. The RSAP is part of the range of measures to meet the government's commitment to end sleeping and follow on from the earlier measures I mentioned with the sleep initiative and the next steps accommodation program. And the next steps accommodation program was brought through by the Borough Council, and they had a successful bid, and that program 15 from Bedford Glass. Those have been acquired, refurbished, and already offered to customers. Those homes have been managed by the homes, and residents have been supported by dedicated tenants and sustained. This bid was produced in collaboration between ourselves, MHCLG, Homes England, and MPH, and was submitted prior to this meeting after consultation with the Cabinet on the 1st of July, subject to approval from Cabinet tonight. The bid proposal before us includes the acquisition and refurbishment of a further 10 convention properties and revenue funding for another tenancy sustainment officer for a fixed term of 2.5 years to work with those refugees and help them into the accommodation, the system with needs that vulnerable people from several backgrounds to help them build from this platform to go on the settled lives. A combination of funding from both the housing revenue accounts and Homes England was required to purchase those 10 bedroom properties. And the scheme will require an increase in the HRA capital programme this financial year of £1.32 million funded between MHCLG, Homes England, the RSAP grant, and housing revenue account borrowing. The scheme has been in place over the 30-year HRA business plan. It shows a positive contribution to the HRA. Full details of financial consideration are found in the exempt Appendix A.
As with the NSAP scheme, customers will be given a 2-year notice of tenancy agreement, during which time they will be supported by dedicated tenancy and the relevant support services, preparation for more settled accommodation, either in the social or private sector. We anticipate that the council will be notified by the 4th of August whether that is successful. The recommendation before us is that the Cabinet recommends the council on Thursday to approve the increased HLA capital programme for £4 million to purchase and refurbish 10 more resident properties through the HLA in order to accommodate and support people who've been sleeping well or offer friendly payments to achieve and and HLA.
Thank you, Adam. There's one speaker on this item, which is Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I understand the report entirely and I understand the reason. But a key question for me on reviewing this and many of our other Bush Sleep initiatives, and the fact that we're increasing the capital programme and successfully receiving funding, they all feel positive initiatives. But there's no overall housing strategy. Everything operates in a silo. We're still not seeing our temporary accommodation costs reduced by any of these actions. And we need to find out why and work on an overall strategy. So I really worry that whilst it feels great to purchase some more properties that seem well and truly needed, what next? What do we do then? The 10 years are temporary. We don't have a housing strategy for where people will be moved to following them leaving these properties. And I also worry that if the HE grant isn't successful and the scheme doesn't proceed, if we've identified that these properties are essential in combating rough sleeping and providing sustainable housing solutions, what's our plan B? Now, Cabinet might be confident completely that the housing funding is in the bag, so to speak, but what is plan B? And what do we do if that doesn't go through? We still need these properties, and when are we going to have or see this overall housing strategy?
If I take the housing strategy, and first of all, I think it's important to grasp that I'm sure Councillor Roberts does understand this, but this report is very specifically about this one bit. It forms part of our overall housing strategy for opposed to London West Sleeping. This has arisen out of the opportunity afforded to us by MSC to cost money to make further inroads into having dedicated properties to assist London West Sleeping. And as a consequence of that, we can be optimistic that will start to make inroads into the bill that we have to put at the moment, temporary accommodation. And answer to that question is, of course, only at council on Thursday. But I think Stuart was some further. Thank you.
I suppose the first thing is to manage the three councils come together and the requirements of what were the policy strategies, which are strategy requirement, alongside our housing strategy. So we are currently working to time frame of having a West Northants housing strategy for the next 12 months. It needs to be in the next 12 months because understand why people are experiencing circumstances they have, what's the need that's sitting behind people presenting performance, what's the need sitting behind people requesting temporary accommodation. So in amongst that, from a West Northants perspective, we have an array of different schemes which contribute in different degrees to how we support individuals at that point of crisis. What we're pushing to move forward is actually the engagement of people far sooner. The need for us to provide this level of provision on an ongoing basis. If we can get involved soon to support people with principles of debt, temporary accommodation. If we're supporting people more holistically, particularly around things like substance and alcohol issues, then we have got a much greater opportunity to support continue to Right. I suppose from a plan B perspective, when we set out this business, and put forward to not just West Northampton, but an array of different places in the country. So we're confident that our bid to London will be successful. If we are not successful, then in effect, we're going to have to continue to look for increased opportunities to provide not just temporary accommodation, but also secure accommodation moving forward. I absolutely acknowledge the notion of duration of time attached to different interventions creates a need for people, but equally it creates unnecessary handoffs for us as a local authority. So the idea would be to move to a position where we've got a greater degree of preventative intervention in place, and we've got a kind of homes first mentality to provide more sustainable accommodation.
Thank you. I'm really sure this plan BCP actually mentions just one of the strands of the problem. Are there any other comments? Anybody else make any questions? Oh, did you want to respond there? You're welcome.
Thank you. I do grasp the concept, Councillor Brown. I do understand why it's here and what it's there for. The reason I wanted to speak on it is specifically around it's not the first time it's been here. A programme of this nature has come forward before us and appears to be the right thing to do and is appropriate to then increase capital. But we can't keep doing that. Or we can't just keep having this revolving door of increasing these property numbers. So it was really to make sure that we have on the agenda that there is a wider housing strategy and going to be taken forward, that this and other reports can be pulled into. Well, thank you for you both of your answers.
Thank you to Councillor Roberts, and apologies, I didn't find a better phrase to use. Just want before we move to the just want to restore the commitment that exists from the administration to build on the successes of the other one that we saw through the pandemic. If there is a silver lining to COVID-19, the success of letting people off the streets is certainly one thing, and there is a joint commitment from officers and members to make sure that we don't see any backsliding on that progress, that we continue to build on it, we continue to help it, and I've set out as one of my key priorities as people that live in the local holder for housing. Confident we've got some fantastically dedicated people working in the housing team at this point who will deliver on that priority.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're done on that. I'll just ask you, did you want to make points?
Yeah,
You already agree. So let's do that then. Let's go to the vote. We've seen the recommendations. This House to firmly agree with the recommendation. Thank you very much. Thank you. This takes us on to item 9, which is welcome to introduce. There are no speakers on this item. A lot of these are issues we've seen before. They're very straightforward. One that won't be considered is Appendix J, which is land that involves a consideration for the school. I have representation from Mike Allen now. We'd like to make a few points, and I wonder if we could dispense with why we're not dealing with item J first, and then deal with the rest of the items. Malcolm, would you be happy if we did that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Mike, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah,
just move on the rest.
Just a really quick comment on Appendix J. It's more as a divisional member than as a cabinet member. But this is very quickly. This is an area of Northampton known as Thorpe. I think there's been some criticism of the consultation in terms of consulting with surrounding areas, and particularly Overston. I can actually back that up from my point of view as well. So the area of Thorpeville, even numbers sit within the multi-division, and those residents were contacted. The odd numbers on the other side of the road actually sit within the Hutchins and Foodville division and weren't consulted, nor were any of the 3 divisional members for our area. So my plea is when we do have that consultation includes all of the surrounding areas and the properties in the neighbouring vicinity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I understand that's there's a little more to be done here. I think perhaps you've got any place and Stuart's leading well. That's right. Saying, yeah, exactly. Quick, yeah, job done. Absolutely. Thank you. Which goes Malcolm with apologies for that slight delay. We'll have a due to introduce the rest of the
Yeah, no problem, Chair.
Well, we view this very much as a tidying up exercise, and those who read the report, there's some quite interesting stories in that, I think. And if anybody wants a detailed further discussion about it, we're very pleased to do so. Each one has its own story. I'm not going to but they're all very, I really think they're very straightforward, with the exception of the area that Mike's just spoken about. So, Mike, any questions, I will just take them. But I'd like to move straight on. Other than to mention on the Wantage Farm is that we joint consultation bit right. That's what we're going to do, but we need to be aware of the DFT response to that, and I will be keeping the candidate very informed and sure as well. We might well have to respond quickly and make decisions one way or the other, depending on any reaction. We may not get it, so we'll have to respond to it. So other than that, Chair, unless anybody's got anything they want to bring up,
Thank you. As you might say, it's talking about quite a number of things we've been familiar with perhaps for a little while, so it's good to see them progress as they are. Any questions, comments at all, or any of this? In which case, just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations, please. Agree? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 10, West Midlands Road. We have no speakers, so we'll hand straight over to Bill just to summarise or introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This council is one of the partner authorities owning West Midlands Railway, who jointly manage the West Midlands business unit of West Midlands Railway. Sounds a bit over the top, but that's where we are. But with the Department of Transport as well, for a legally binding collaboration agreement. As I think most people are aware, there are changes to passenger rail franchising, mainly in response to COVID, and the existing West Midlands Rail franchise will actually terminate on the 19th of September. And instead of being franchised, it will be replaced by a directly awarded national rail contract. And of course, this change is not reflected in the collaboration agreement. Therefore, we need to change the collaboration agreement. And changes to the collaboration agreement require approval by all the partner authorities, including this council, prior to a special resolution by the West Midlands Railway Board of Directors. And it's usual to do this by taking the report through alternative. I think, Chair, in order to influence the development of rail services to Northampton and Rugby, endorsing the collaboration agreement and continuing to actively participate in the board structure as identified in the recommendation, which I ask colleagues to agree. If we're not at the table, we can't influence, and I think it's important to be at the table to exert that influence. So I refer you to the recommendations in section 3 and ask that Cabinet support those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bill. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is something we need to remain involved in. Does anyone have any queries or points they'd like to make? In which case, I just ask you please to confirm your agreement to the recommendations to the group. Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 11, which is OPRA's governance and different arrangements. We do have one speaker, which is Councillor Roberts. We'll hand over to Mike, who's going to introduce the report for us. Mike.
Thank you very much. This is a report really to give an update and an overview to the new council of the role of OPRA's finding of temporary staff and recruitment processes and procedures around that. And really the proof of their success has been in the COVID period, because they've been immensely helpful flexibility and and fast responses during this time when we needed people to be, leading people on board very, very quickly. So it's been a probably successful over the past 15 months or so. So hopefully we can continue that as we get back into what is going to be the new normal. Happy to present the report.
Very good. That's good. Thank you. So one speaker, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, it's different for me, if you're not already. You might think it's a bit strange, I've been speaking on the report, but I think what else you got to say. Well, I've read it with some interest, it was a subject I wasn't familiar with for our processes. And obviously the use of tackle companies across the country has been really different in levels of success. So it's interesting to see the successes we generated here. And I can see the financial successes that are processed, but I worry whether a conflict has been considered at all, and whether a conflict arises here in the profitability of this company relates directly to them achieving more agency placements. But as a local authority, we would normally be seeking to reduce the level of agency use wherever possible. And in fact, one of the comments within the report is that we reduce the spend on agency costs as a result of using this organisation and utilising the tackle organisation. So I just worry where that conflict arises, or whether we've considered that conflict arising in that it's making the profit is important to it, which generates a dividend for us. But actually, one of our goals should be to stop using agencies and to secure staff on a full-time basis without that expenditure at all. And then I had a question on this 10% of the annual spend on agency staff has been saved, and I just wondered, is that across all 4 councils, or just NCC because they were within it and the other councils that it was working across? Or where's that split of 10% savings come from? And I know there's a dynamic purchasing system, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this question, but at the last cabinet meeting we had a discussion around dynamic purchasing systems and having to renew the use of dynamic purchasing systems for social care provision. I just wondered whether or not that was something that has for this organisation.
Very good. Thank you. A few questions there. Any you can handle, or do you need to get back?
I'm happy to take your middle one first, which was the saving, the 10% was just NCC. So happy to clear that one up. Your first one was on is there a potential conflict? I don't think there is, and I think that the proof of this has been over the last 15 months, as I've said, to give us that ability to hire quickly. So I don't think that has been. I don't think there will be, but clearly we'll keep it under review as we keep all policies and procedures under review. I've now forgotten the third one. Could you remind me what it was?
What was the third one? The dynamic purchasing systems and the use of the dynamic purchasing system, and whether there's any, there may well not be, any contractual position for us to be renewing that dynamic purchasing system like we did with the social care contracts.
It's a really good question. I'm going to bow to a member of my team, if that's okay. Alison, are you happy to answer that?
Can I get back to you?
Of course. If you could also get back to me on the first one, I think, because I'm not sure that I accept that as an answer. I think if we haven't considered whether or not it's a conflict and whether a conflict has arisen, then we really ought to be doing that as an authority.
Yeah, and I'm happy to agree to that. We'll come back on both those points. It's a new area for me too, so I'm learning about it too. So we'll come back on both those.
Thank you, Councillor. I respectfully appreciate it. It's a new area for me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any further queries or points to make on this one? No, okay. In which case, please ask you to confirm your agreements and recommendations, please. Agree? Thank you very much. This takes us on to item 12, variation of school admission arrangements. In Councillor Baker's absence, Councillor Goldie has kindly agreed to present this report. We have one speaker in the moment, which is Councillor Randall. But first of all, I'll choose you to introduce the report. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief because it's a very short report. Although there are 5 sets of appendices, attached to it. So basically, a revised school admissions code was laid before Parliament earlier this year in May. Changes to the code necessitate changes to the admission arrangements for all admission authorities. And we are the admission authority for our area, therefore this has to be run through us as a cabinet today. So both the 2021-22 and 22-23 admissions arrangements for all the community and voluntary controlled schools will need to be varied in order to comply with the 2021 code, which comes into force on 1st September this year. So we're asking us to determine the necessary variations to the admission arrangements for the coming school year and the 2022-23. And basically, the main one is that to amend the first over-subscription criteria for community and voluntary controlled schools to give the highest priority to looked after children and all previously looked after children, which I'm sure everybody will agree is a really positive thing to do. And to agree that West Northampton's New in Year scheme can be included in the admission arrangements, to approve the new fair access protocol, subject to consultation with schools in West Northamptonshire, to authorise the Director of Children's Services to take any action necessary to give effect to the children, to the admissions policies, and to make any changes necessary to the admissions policies where required to give effect to any acts, regulations or revised school admissions or school admission appeals code or binding schools adjudicated court or ombudsman decisions whenever they arise. Any variation agreed will be additional to the code passing through Parliament, and all such variations come into force from 1st of September this year. So these national legislation on school admissions mean that the recommended variations are necessary for West Northampton and that we comply with the statutory requirements of the code. It's the duty of all admissions authorities to act in accordance with the code, and included with the papers, as I mentioned, the admission arrangements for community and voluntary controlled schools in West Northampton, the proposed fair access protocol for September 2021, point scoring ranking process, and in terms of reference for panel meetings. So I'm pleased to say by Cabinet agreeing to the arrangement as per the recommendations, we will be compliant with the admission. Chris Wickens, who's one of the team who leads this part, I know from past experience that team does an excellent job in dealing with admissions, which is a huge challenge for us. So we've always had really good performance. So I hope that continues, Chair. So I'm happy to present the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt. So there one speaker. So we'll have those Councillor Randy Vanderpool.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It's just a clarification, really. It says that we're responsible for admission arrangements for community and voluntary controlled schools. Does that mean that academy and free schools can handpick their students?
I would perhaps have to ask Chris to comment on that. What I do know is I think a lot of them choose to use the authority to run the admissions for them. But perhaps I can ask Chris, if you don't mind, just to clarify.
Chris, did you want to swap seats with Wendy Benson? Is that the answer?
For all community and voluntary controls, we act what's called the admission authority. We can direct those schools to comply with the act. Academies and free schools do not have to. We're not admission authority, that's our own admission authority, but they're still required to comply with the school admissions code and school admission criteria for schools. And the DFE oversees academy free schools. We oversee.
So it means they can handpick.
They can come there.
They can't handpick. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? I should further agree to the recommendations, please. Thank you very much.
So I'm mindful, and I welcome the input of officers around the place, but I am mindful that there's people being streamed and people are listening to this and watching it wherever at home. With the views that the officers have spoken, they won't have been heard, and the public who are watching will probably be a bit confused as to what's been said. Can we have an arrangement where when officers are welcome to come and speak, there is a microphone for them to use so that everybody can be heard and understood and we don't confuse the public.
Yeah, I think that's his decision next time. Your myself, by the way. Okay, right, let's move on then. We're making good progress. Item 13 is shared service arrangements, fairly straightforward, I think. No speakers involved. Malcolm, this was
Well, we're at the end of the first quarter now, and this is the second page tonight that where it's been tidying up exercise, and those of you who read through the appendices will see that why that is, and each of these various authorities come together and different arrangements, very complex because of that, and we've taken the view that we should simplify it. And the conclusion we come to is that that's what we want to process. That's the internal audit and also the revenue and benefits to bring them in-house. Now, it's not a cost-saving exercise. The idea is making it easier for us, more efficient, but in practice, we're not claiming any cost-saving, but I suspect that the efficiency will be. And I'm looking for your support on that this evening. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to submit the report.
things are pretty straightforward. Discussion about it, but is there any comment or question that the cabinet member would like to raise? No, okay, in which case, I should confirm your agreement to the recommendation. Very good, thank you. I absolutely agree. Takes us on to item 14, which is with Councillor Berry. We have one speaker, Councillor Roberts. This is Market Square, Northampton Market Square redevelopment. This is thank you.
Thank you. This is a much welcome paper, which I'm pleased to present. So the purpose of the report, as it says on page 265, is to seek necessary approval to deliver the future High Street funded project in the Northampton Market Square. And this includes approving the use of the ring-fenced future High Street fund grant of £8,427,625, which was officially granted around April of this year. So I'd also like to refer you to the overall master plan, which is in Appendix 2, because this will show you how this fits into the big picture of the overall Northampton Town Centre generation, which I know will be eagerly awaiting. Just a little bit of background, in 2019, Northampton Forward developed a town centre master plan. And Northampton Forward is made up of a conglomeration of businesses, MPs, excluding Michael Ellis, West Northampton Council, the University, Semnet Police, the Royal and Durham and the Chamber of Commerce. It has until recently been chaired by our leader here, Jonathan Nunn, but it's now just recently been taken over by Martin Mason of Shoes. We meet monthly, and Jonathan, myself, and now Malcolm has agreed to join us next meeting are the West Northampton Council representatives. The Northampton Forward Board is the key governance forum for oversight of this transformation programme. There are 5 town centre areas of the master plan, of which the Market Square is the first to come with details cabinet. The others are the Greyfriars, otherwise known as the bus area, the Abington Street, the Cultural Quarter, and the Mayfair area. With a catchment area of over 1 million people, I don't think anybody could say that there isn't anything that's more critical than sorting out the town centre of Northampton. There's been a lack of investment for decades and declining number of market stalls, specifically within the Market Square, not to mention antisocial behaviour in the evening. Added to this, we have the impact of COVID, which has exacerbated all the problems, and nearly 15% year-on-year decrease in footfall. So the focus moving forward will be on consolidating the retail core. The report on page 268 goes into the background as to how the funding came about. The 2 projects were considered and how we came about the Market Square decision. Some of the main features of the Market Square Master Plan are on page 269. I'll go into those briefly in a minute, but there is a full design report in Appendix 1. This is for budgetary purposes, and obviously everything else still needs to go through the planning, tender process to contractors, etc. The square is going to be zoned with clear open spaces for events, concerts, performance, and all sorts of other events, the access style if you like. There will be double-sided seating, fixed permanent market stall, and further temporary seating stalls. There will be water features, tree avenues, smart room services, robust cabling, bubble sets, new furniture lighting, etc. All things we can really look forward to. So in terms of resourcing, external appointments are noted on page 271, as there are not the skills, qualifications, experience in-house to move this project forward without going externally. The principal regen person driving all of this is Kevin Langley, and having spent considerable time with him, I get the impression that he's definitely all over this, very passionate about delivering it. Gillespie's are the landscape architects and the lead designer. We will also be procuring a conservation officer, a mechanical electrical engineer, civil engineer, quantity surveyor, etc. The principal contract will be external, and that will be important to get tied down legally on the deliverables, but also because the project is so complex in terms of managing relationships with surrounding businesses, landowners and stallholders. So in terms of the tender process, there will be a normal tender process on this basis. It will go out and will be within the framework that we normally use. The market traders will actually be affected on a short-term basis, and they will be required to move temporarily. But further consultation is currently underway with them, and also with the West Midlands Council Town Centre team, because as you can imagine, this will be a fun session. In terms of budgets, well, the good news is there's no WNC match funding for this project. It's funded solely by the FHSF grant of £8,427,625. The challenging bit will obviously be sticking to that budget and sticking with the time frame. There is a 10% risk contingency in the budget and a further 10% optimism bias adjustment. This is absolutely critical because having attended quite a few webinars recently, the cost of raw materials, labour, etc. on construction sites has so massively accelerated that probably 10% of that 20% contingency will have already been taken up. So that is not to be taken anything but very seriously. It will be scrutinised constantly by an appointed quantity surveyor to ensure it's delivered on budget and on time, along with us as a cabinet. All capital expenditure will be approved and monitored by the WNC Capital Assets Board, as I believe that's already been discussed this week. And the senior finance officers will also be at that board meeting, as will the appointed legal representatives. So in terms of consultation, which obviously we all need to know has been carried out with due diligence, there has been consultation at each stage so far and will continue throughout the programme. The Town Centre Master Plan has also included substantial consultation. One of the key areas of feedback to add to everything that has been said so far for the future in terms of environmental and congestion issues, small, bespoke, high quality retail representation, a need for getting a greater provision of small food and drink suppliers in terms of quality restaurants and smart bars in the area, and more cleanliness and tidiness and responsiveness to cleaning up. So the timelines, looking to the end now, the FHSF project must be achieved by March the 31st, 2024. Now that sounds like a long time ahead, but it isn't in a project of this scale, magnitude and complexity. Work will commence in the summer of 2022. So the recommendations are quite lengthy, but they are detailed in section 3 on page 266, which I can go through if you like, or we can note, whichever you prefer. Yes, yeah, okay, so the note, first of all, the Cabinet is asked to note work to date on securing 8,427,625 for the redevelopment of Northampton Market Square.
to approve that ring fence budget for the Northampton Realm improvements as set out in the report, stage 2 in your appendix. To delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place, Economy, Environment, in consultation with the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer, and the Cabinet member for Economic Development, Town Centre, Regeneration and Growth. To go ahead and appoint a design team to develop the Market Square proposals. To appoint a principal contractor that demonstrates best value and quality using the OJEU compliant procurement processes. To delegate the authority to head of major projects and regeneration to improve that final design ahead of the procurement of the principal contractor. This will be taken through the Northampton Town Deals Board, Northampton Port Board, of which I have just mentioned. Note that full planning applications will need to take place. Note that additional revenue pressure that this project will create for West Northamptonshire Council, and the reasons for the recommendations. In effect, the recommendations are proposed to align with the Northampton Town Centre Master Plan and will see the design and the implementation of the catalyst regeneration project of the town. To not do this would actually have huge risks actually to Northamptonshire, West Northampton Council. We have a credibility issue here if we don't move forward with this. It has been much awaited for a long time, and everybody's very pleased to see that we are now at this stage. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It was tremendously exciting, really exciting. A couple of things to speak. First of all, we've got registered Emma Roberts. Emma, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, Councillor. Just a couple of points. It probably comes as no surprise, particularly to Councillor Nunn, that the Labour group have constantly said that the makeup of the Northampton Forward Board needed to be reviewed, and I wonder whether now is the exact opportunity to review the makeup of the Northampton Forward Board. Councillor Bowen said that the Northampton Forward Board was the key oversight body of this project. Given the size of the project and the impact of the people of West Northampton, particularly Northampton town, this council should be the key oversight body. And I appreciate that there are some members, but there are not members of all parties on the Northampton Forward Board at all. That's the first point. Consultation took place previously, and there were many comments around the consultation and the effectiveness of that consultation. One of the comments that was made was that people weren't actually asked which I did. So people were just asked which I did you prefer. They weren't asked for alternatives or what they actually wanted to see on their Market Square. And there were many people who felt the consultation process wasn't sufficient, including many of our local historians who wanted to protect the heritage of the Market Square. So how the document says that there will be further consultation in the autumn, welcome that. But how will we maximise that consultation process? And how will we make sure that people feel that they are included and involved with the next steps? I think this is such a big deal for the centre of Northampton. Such a lot of money to spend. We've got to get it right and get people on board who enjoy the space. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to answer some of those, but please go ahead. Is there anything you want to?
Yeah, I think we'll have a discussion about the request for Labour participation on the board. By the time we go on that one, because he's been on this one for quite some time. In terms of consultation, it's funny that you should mention that, because I actually raised it as a direct question to Kevin Langley. So, what consultation has taken place? I was kind of assured by that feedback. It's still not too late to continue to feedback. So I think your question about what can we do to move forward towards further consultation, I minded, given what you said, to then dig deep to find out what has been done and what more needs to be done, and obviously to include you in that consultation in terms of how we communicate with the wider audience. This is our one opportunity to get buy-in. I mean, every time I speak something about Town Centre Regen, nobody seems to know what's going on, and that's only because probably the people I'm speaking to haven't made an effort to understand it. But you kind of have to, it has to go both ways, doesn't it? So I think we probably need to market a bit more. I don't know, but I will find out for you.
I'll just add a couple of comments to that. The original consultation we've done was not just a presentation, which you want to allow free text and people to spend. So some people put 1,000-word responses in by putting 1,200-word responses into individual questions. They could suggest any idea that they did, and many of the ideas that were incorporated in the design were completely open. Happy to have the discussion again about opposition representation. My view remains the same. This only comes up at public meetings like this, when we actually look to share information or produce member briefings. Nobody turns up from opposition parties. So that remains the same. This is on target to deliver something really exciting, on target to deliver what the people of Northampton deserve and want. And it's making that progress because it's been kept out of the political arena. This council, full council and cabinet have oversight over spending these issues. Absolutely they do. They are the custodians of the money, but this is working well. In terms of the thorough consultation, the previous consultation reproduced also in full in the newspaper, covered enormously at the BBC and all independent channels and so on. Other than knocking each individual door and telling me, we put briefers in doctor surgeries. They take around every doctor surgery in the town. So if you happen to visit the doctor during the month or so we're doing the consultation, you can see it's pretty thorough. And it's that commitment plus the widening of the stakeholders who are involved from business community groups that has meant that these plans have attracted, if you like, excitement, enthusiasm, and not just cynicism as the last half dozen set of plans for the market have. So I think we're on track with them, and we'll probably keep posted. Very happy to do another member briefing again though on this and the things that are about to be reported under the town scope. We always have to do that.
Yeah, we do remember briefing recently on this.
This is very
Yeah,
interesting, but
maybe
it
we
gets
need
more
to-
air in the public arena than it actually does in terms of the input from people wanting to read things. And that's absolutely council officers, so that's wrong, but that's absolutely right. Thank you.
I am going to come back, Jerry, if I may, because the reaction was unexpected from you there. I don't know why people aren't attending some of the briefings if they aren't attending some of the briefings, whether it's the timing of the briefings or organisation. I don't know, I can't comment. I haven't come here this evening to make some display of Councillor Nunn, you're wrong. I genuinely believe that people have concerns about the consultation. I also believe that having opposition parties, not just Labour members, but all parties of the makeup of the West Northampton Council on the Northampton Forward Board is an appropriate function. Scrutiny is made up of different parties, and scrutiny is designed to take the political arena out of it. We've a proven function of scrutiny that we can do that, and I don't see why we can't be part of the overall board. And all I would say on the consultation is maybe, and I appreciate Councillor Rowe's comments really openly on the fact that you'll talk to people about what they like, but maybe talk to people who thought it wasn't good. Maybe let's have a conversation with them. And I'm not saying you haven't already, Councillor Nunn, had that conversation. You may well have done, you were much more involved than I was. But let's have a conversation with those people who said no, it didn't work, and let's see if they've got some suggestions on how it could.
Another opportunity to consult. Look, very happy to map out the consultation plan. I know we will be to sit down with all parties, cross parties, and say, well, what's this consultation missing? Have the discussions with those who were perhaps thinking about the consultation but who chose not to engage with it. Happy to talk to you about the consultation, how we make sure that we can reach as many people as we can. Did you want to add anything further, Lizzie?
Maybe just that the impression I got from the amount of time I've been on that board is that they don't want it to become a political environment, and they actually you're no longer there with the chair of the board. I think they would rather take it out of that arena, but maybe there is a way here of meeting halfway and doing consultation in another way to make sure that you're feeling like you're being communicated with.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. That's a really open approach from you, so I do appreciate that. And if yourselves can keep it apolitical, I'm pretty sure that other members of the council can as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we therefore have the recommendations as Lizzie's outlined. Any comments or questions? Sorry, Adam, a moment ago you were going to some months.
I think the points I was going to raise about consultation have largely been covered in the report as a route for public consultation. I hope that is as thorough as we would like it to be. to draw attention to is the appointment of the conservation advisor and the production of the detailed heritage report, which could be declared, has been declared in my registered members' interest. And gifted a couple of books by Mike Ingram, local historian, recently, which value-wise didn't have too much interest anyway. Mike was kind enough to show me some historic sites of Northampton, including across Market Square, which is a huge historical significance nationwide, not just in our county. And I would encourage absolutely anyone to go and have a walk around the Market Square stand and go to a 360 visual, because there are some remarkable buildings, massive historical value. And I would really hope that we keep that in mind throughout this process, make the absolute most of it, because Councillor Bowen's absolutely right, this is a hugely exciting opportunity. And if we get this right, then we will have a Market Square that really lifts up Northampton. It will bring the virtues of cultural quarters, St Giles Street, all of those most attractive areas in Northampton. It will start to expand out, also do a facelift to Northampton Town Centre that will, I think, play a large part in regenerating a part of Northampton which is in dire need of improvement, and that we can make far more of. Already through visualising the cultural events, food markets, the arts festivals that we could hold in the future if we get this through. The possibilities are infinite, and it will help huge amounts of Northampton as a destination. So, the consultation in mind with heritage concerns in mind, I'm hugely supportive of this proposal.
Thank you, Adam. Excellent points. Please, it's the source of the beaten heart.
This is a conversation you and I had before about the account in the Houston there, and how we've now got the specifications for it. And it's all in there.
Put that in your consultation. Very good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any further comments at all on this report? Thank you. Thanks. Is it? No? In which case, could you ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations, please? Is that agreed? John, agreed. Thank you very much. In fact, we want further, if you have an earlier copy of the agenda, you may not realise that actually Northampton Town's funds, which is also reason, does not need to be in any way confidential, so we're going to take that before we go into private session.
Yeah.
Okay. With no speakers registered on it. Is it over to you?
Right, so this one quite as detailed as the other one, but basically this is to highlight the progress made to date of the Northampton Towns programme, and the next step is to successfully draw down the allocation of 24.9 million from MHCLG. So what this report does, it highlights the resources needed and the approach, the complex programme of activity. And that includes the development of a Green Book compliant business case for each project. Now, this is opposed to the MHCLG process for compliancy, which was considered perhaps being a little bit more long-winded than doing it the Green Book way. So this Towns Fund is part of the government's plan for levelling up the UK economy. On top of that, obviously with COVID, the needs can never be more important. And Northampton itself has been considered one of the areas, the key areas in Northamptonshire, as an area that needs that focus of investment to regenerate it. So in 2019, Northampton was one of 101 places invited to the proposal. And the Northampton Forward Board was set up to oversee the submission. In March of this year, Northampton was offered a town deal to the value of a whopping £24.9 million. And in fact, I think we want to pick us in that. Yeah, I think we will. I mean, Jonathan.
It was 25.
Yeah, that was delivered in 25. So that is amazing. And I think we were one of the top scorers in terms of achieving that. So that's amazing. I'll come back to the recommendations at the end, but one of the other main requirements by the government is set to get the town deal was to submit a town investment plan. And again, that was in the appendix in your pack, all being well. So from this £25 million, what we have to do is set up a draft set of terms, which then obviously have to be signed and conditions met to access the funding. Now, if you go into your documents for this report, each project within that £25 million is listed very clearly in brief in your pack, so that you can see each of those projects and what value is associated with them. So, for example, the town centre public realm fund would be 5 million, and that would be to deliver pedestrian areas around the main shopping streets. Then you go on to Abington Street, then Mayfair Heritage Gateway, which is the one end towards the town, towards the train station, and then Four Waterside, which is a whole new amazing development down by the opposite of the train station, which includes a mix of residential office and also a hotel. And then you've got 24 Guildhall Road Art Centre, and then the Charles Rennie Mackintosh Museum, the extension going on there, which is also really exciting, and I've already visited them. I am making my way around the town in terms of meeting various businesses and working on the projects, particularly with Kevin Langley. St. Peter's and Old Black Lion, this will be one that you, Adam, will want to really zoom into. When I was on the Heritage Board, I had a full briefing on that. And then also a social enterprise development fund to help people access support for finding work and developing a pipeline of employment, particularly at the lower levels for the retail side. So I've already said that this will be produced by a Green Book compliant business case using rigorous analysis of quality data. And below that, in section 5.10, there is a clear rationale as to how that will happen. West Northamptonshire Council is the accountable body for that Northampton Town deal, and it will also go through a 3-stage governance process, which is important, going back to our previous comments. So it will go through the Northampton Forward Delivery Oversight Group, it will go through the Northampton Forward Board, and also the West Northamptonshire Executive, i.e. here tonight. There will also be the usual impact assessments and environmental impact assessments, as well as the normal project level impact assessments. The town deal summary document will include the business cases, which obviously go through the Green Book process, and a number of key areas which are identified in section 5.20 of your report. If you want to know the timelines, which I think is quite interesting to know, they are carrying on from that in section 5.21. So you'll see there where the sign-off happens, where the cabinet sign-off takes place, the submission to government, and the delivery of that project. So there are 10 of those to look at. The critical thing is to look at how we're actually going to achieve this in those tight timeframes. And the fact of the matter is that we do not have manpower, capacity, or resources or skills in-house, so we will need to recruit 3 new officer roles. That being the Regeneration Programme Manager, the Regeneration Programme Officer, and a Capital Project Officer. That's actually critical if we are to deliver on time and budget. And what that does is, despite just being able to access all sorts of other funds, including the NHCLG Towns Fund of 99,000 and the revenue grant of £200,000 for Towns Fund, and also another 34,000 of the Waterside Enterprise Zone funding grant, we are still 110,000 short. So, what we need to do tonight is agree that we will forward fund that £110,000 to develop the 2-stage business case. This is in your recommendations, and that will need to be agreed tonight. If we don't do it, then we won't be able to actually go forward to release that £24.9 million grant. So we have to do it, basically. It is still a lot of money, £110,000, but compared to the theme of the projects that we're doing, clearly, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, it's definitely worth investment. So, in terms of risk, what is the risk? Well, again, it's all about credibility to us. People are crying out for this development in Northampton. We know they are. It's going to release more properties for regeneration for retail, obviously tightening up in terms of the zone, but also for office space, redesigning the office space requirements based on the now new COVID era, and also residential. So politically, there is a huge risk for us not doing this, and I would ask you to endorse that extra £110,000 tonight. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Any other questions or comments on this? Do you want to make any remarks? Emily, do you want to make a quick comment?
Thank you, but and I was speaking, I thought I registered on that one as well, but to do my rush earlier on. So, the only commentary I want to make at the moment, I'm concerned about how these processes are run and how we will have oversight. But the only concern I had immediately was open scrutiny. There's no reference to open scrutiny being involved in these projects, and I think that's a mistake. I think there should be a review. Apologies, I've got the worst sore throat. But there'll be a mistake not to have a review of scrutiny, have a look at these stages, and particularly return on investment. I think that's important.
I don't think we have any problem with those. We've not been approached. We would have looked at where we stand now, though. Let's remember that whilst we've put 110,000 into the final business case, this doesn't Oxford 37 million both schemes. And the total value of regeneration projects with private investment is 200 million. So it's really gathering momentum now. The Mary Macintosh at 78 have now received back bids, sealed bids from their contractors, and we've possibly the business delaying until September their progress by having to bring it back. So these projects are ready to roll. So we now scrutiny to do what we want to do, really do what we want to do, but to move on it very quickly, but it has to get handled.
Yeah. I mean, the Ray Macintosh is a classic example where we need to move fast because technically the glass atrium that they are building, Pilkington Glass, are going out of production post this year because they're just not getting the support that they expected. So we do need to put the order into that. But Stuart has just mentioned that he has suggested to overview scrutiny that this does come forward. So I think that's a valid point, and I think you would welcome it.
Excellent, thank you, and I'm pleased to ask you. And I know it won't be pre-decision scrutiny, but it should be scrutiny.
Great. Any further comments on this? No, in which case, just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations, please. Thank you. John, thank you very much. We, as are aware, before we go into the question public, I don't think we have a specific urgent business. In which case, if we may, that's what we now need to do. So we have a couple of items. One is an appendix to it. The other is a private report, both of which would negatively impact possibly the best value for the taxpayer. So we're moving on section 100 to the public being excluded from these the grounds. The work of the public or president might be insensitive information should be disclosed